A discovery that changed everything. The galactic community had long held a simple truth. Civilizations, once they reached the stars, would come to an understanding. They would set aside their past conflicts, their petty territorial disputes, and embrace the vastness of the cosmos. It had been that way for thousands of years, with every species that reached beyond their homeworld falling neatly into the established order of things. That was until they discovered Earth. A routine deep space probe had picked up transmissions from an uncharted blue-green planet orbiting a young star. The transmissions were primitive at first, simple radio waves, music, voices, patterns of speech. But soon, those signals evolved into something far more disturbing. The humans weren't just reaching for the stars. They were preparing for war. The Galactic Council, a governing body overseeing hundreds of advanced species, convened in an emergency session the moment they deciphered the first truly alarming human broadcast. Not a message of peace, not a declaration of unity, but a warning. To those beyond our world, we extend our hand in friendship. We seek peace, cooperation, and mutual prosperity. However, let there be no misunderstanding. Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not seek to rule us. Do not attempt to subjugate us. We will not allow it. The words shook the council to its core. For millennia, every species that had developed interstellar travel had come to the same conclusion. A military was unnecessary. Once a civilization reached the stars, they realized that war was too costly, too inefficient, too wasteful. Trade, cooperation, and diplomacy had become the universal way of life. Yet here was humanity, an infant species that had barely reached its own moon, sending threats into the void. They had no fleet, no colonies, no means of defending themselves. And yet, they had warned the galaxy not to push them too far. The first contact debate. In the sprawling Galactic Council chamber, a great assembly of alien leaders and scholars gathered, their voices filling the massive hall with hushed urgency. Chancellor Merix, a member of the esteemed Kitheri species, observed the debate from the central podium, his luminous blue eyes flickering between the representatives of 100 worlds. "This is highly irregular," said Councillor Zerak of the Fourthen Dominion, a towering reptilian being draped in ceremonial robes. "No civilization has ever issued such a warning before. They are not even a unified people, yet they threaten the entire galactic order." Beside him, Ambassador Velexa of the Cyphram Consortium clicked her mandibles in displeasure. "It is dangerous rhetoric, nothing more. They are a young species, full of bravado and misplaced confidence. In time, they will see the futility of violence." A murmur of agreement spread through the chamber. For centuries, every species that had reached the stars had come to the same conclusion. War was an outdated concept. But not everyone agreed. A deep, resonating voice broke through the conversation. "Perhaps you are wrong," said General Renak of the Sauric Imperium, a battle-hardened veteran from one of the few species that still maintained a standing military, though only in ceremonial fashion. His massive frame loomed over the other representatives as he spoke. "Perhaps the humans are different. Perhaps they truly believe in what they say. If that is the case, we must proceed with extreme caution." Silence fell over the chamber. Then, Chancellor Merix spoke. "We cannot ignore this. If they are as militant as they appear, they must be monitored. If they are bluffing, we will expose them. If they are dangerous, we will contain them before they become a threat." There was no further debate. The Council's decision was made. A fleet would be sent, not to welcome humanity, but to assess and, if necessary, control them. The arrival of the observation fleet, when the first Meridian-class observation vessel entered Earth's solar system, it did so under the guise of diplomacy. It had been a standard protocol for centuries. When encountering a new civilization, they would send an ambassadorial fleet, establish first contact, and gradually integrate the species into the galactic community. But this time, the approach was different. The observation fleet cloaked itself, drifting undetected past Jupiter's orbit. Its mission was not peaceful negotiation. It was reconnaissance. The galactic community needed to understand humanity. And what they found terrified them. The American problem. The first shock came when the observers analyzed Earth's military spending. In almost every species' history, once they reached an advanced technological stage, they demilitarized. Wars were seen as wasteful and unnecessary. Even civilizations that had once been warlike had eventually seen the benefits of universal cooperation. But Earth had done the opposite. One nation, in particular, stood out: the United States of America. A single country, with a standing military budget greater than most interstellar nations combined. Their navy alone was large enough to outclass entire planetary defense fleets. Their air force was so advanced that it rivaled early spacefaring warships. Their ground forces were vast, well-trained, and battle-hardened, not from ceremonial exercises, but from centuries of actual warfare. And what disturbed the observers the most? Humanity had never stopped fighting. While other species had ended warfare thousands of years ago, Earth's history was one of constant conflict, adaptation, and survival. "This is unprecedented," whispered Admiral Cal Thar, one of the Meridian commanders tasked with observing humanity. His counterpart, strategist Lyra, studied the reports in silence before muttering, "They are war-born. Every major advancement they've made has been forged through conflict." It was a truth that shattered everything the galactic community had believed. The Americans, and by extension, the entirety of humanity, were not an anomaly. They were a force of nature. And worst of all, they were just getting started. The decision that would change the galaxy. Back in the Galactic Council, the debate raged once more. Some argued for containment, believing humanity's militaristic tendencies made them too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic fold. Others suggested isolation, cutting Earth off from interstellar trade, and ensuring they never gained access to faster-than-light travel. But the most aggressive voices called for something far more drastic: preemptive elimination, destroying humanity before they could ever become a real threat. As the Council deliberated, a new report arrived, one that sent shockwaves through the entire assembly. A trading vessel, previously unremarkable, had just been spotted leaving Earth's orbit, a human vessel, and painted along its hull, in massive, unmistakable lettering, 50 stars, 13 stripes, a message, a challenge, a declaration. The humans were coming. And the galaxy was not ready. The first mistake. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Not the kind of silence that came from contemplation, nor the silence that followed a grand speech. This was the kind of silence that came from dread. A collective realization that something had just shifted in the balance of power. A simple image, an Earth-built trading vessel with a hull marked by 50 stars and 13 stripes, floated before them, projected in high definition for all to see. There was no mistaking it. The humans had left Earth. They had acquired faster-than-light travel, and despite every effort to contain and isolate them, despite the embargo on selling any human nation the technology to reach the stars, they had figured it out on their own. The impossible leap. Chancellor Merrickx, the highest-ranking member of the Galactic Council, finally spoke, his voice trembling with disbelief. There were no reports of human technological advancement in this area. No trade. No leaks. No stolen technology. How did they do this? An uneasy murmur spread across the chamber. They must have reverse-engineered something, muttered Councillor Zirak, his reptilian brow furrowed. But that should have taken centuries, not decades. General Renak, the Soric Imperium's representative, studied the report in silence. Then his deep voice cut through the air like a blade. They didn't reverse-engineer anything. The room turned toward him. He gestured toward the image, his armored hand clenching into a fist. Look at that ship. That is not a replica. That is something new. The realization sent a wave of tension through the council. Humanity hadn't copied FTL drives. They had built their own. The Americans and the problem of containment. Among the most frustrated figures in the chamber was Ambassador Vrelm of the Kitharin Syndicate, one of the leading enforcers of the human containment policy. His people had been charged with monitoring human trade routes, ensuring that no alien technology, particularly faster-than-light capabilities, ever reached Earth. Yet somehow, despite every blockade, every restriction, and every piece of legislation passed to isolate humanity, they had done the impossible. And worse still, they were not alone. A secondary transmission had arrived with the report, one far more unsettling than the first. Humanity's first interstellar trade convoy had left Earth en masse. Not one ship, not two, 172 vessels, all Earth-made, all marked with national insignias, and at least half of them bore the colors of the United States of America. The room went dead silent as they reviewed the latest scans. The humans weren't just leaving Earth. They were establishing a foothold in space. The Council's next move. Chancellor Merrickx exhaled slowly, regaining control of his composure. "It is clear," he said, his voice measured but firm, "that humanity has not only ignored our containment protocols, but has surpassed them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. "We cannot afford to let this continue." Councillor Valexa clicked her mandibles sharply. "Agreed. We need to act now, before they become entrenched in galactic affairs, before they spread further." A dark silence followed. The Council had made a mistake. They had assumed humanity would remain within the confines of their own solar system for centuries. They had believed Earth was easily contained, that its people were too fractured, too preoccupied with their own world's conflicts to unite under a single purpose. They had been wrong. And now the question was how to correct that mistake before it was too late. "We have two options," General Renack stated. The room turned toward him once more. "We can welcome them, offer them a place in the Council, attempt to guide them toward peace." Several representatives scoffed at the idea. Councillor Zirak sneered. "And if they refuse?" Renack's next words chilled the chamber. "Then we remove them, before they can establish themselves as a true galactic power." A harsh, bitter silence followed. No one wanted to admit it, but they all knew the truth. Humanity was a threat. If the Americans, or any of their allies, were allowed to continue their expansion, then in a few decades, there might not be a council left to discuss it. The first mistake. The decision was made. A containment fleet was dispatched minus 50 warships from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, each carrying advanced weaponry capable of leveling planets. They did not arrive with an offer of diplomacy. They did not seek negotiations. Their orders were clear. Blockade Earth. Intercept all human ships. Enforce containment at any cost. It was meant to be a simple show of force, a demonstration that the Galactic Council's authority could not be ignored. Instead, it became the greatest mistake in galactic history, because humanity had been preparing for this day. The first shot fired. The blockade fleet arrived in Earth's solar system in perfect formation, cutting off all known trade routes. Their ships, sleek and technologically superior, took up positions across Mars, the asteroid belt, and near the lunar colonies. They broadcasted their message loud and clear. By order of the Galactic Council, all human vessels are to stand down immediately. Any further attempts to expand beyond your system will be met with force. For a moment, it seemed as though Earth had no response. The human ships that had begun their trade missions remained silent, their engines dimmed, drifting in place. Then, a single reply came through. A transmission from Admiral James Calloway, the commanding officer of the newly formed United Terran Fleet. His voice was calm, unshaken. "Understood. However, we kindly request that you reconsider your blockade. If you do not, we will be forced to take action." The Galactic Council commanders laughed. A species that had just recently discovered interstellar travel, threatening a blockade fleet. It was pathetic. The fleet's commander, Grand Admiral Theron of the Kithaeron Syndicate, smirked. "And what action will you take, human?" For a moment, silence. Then, a new fleet appeared on their sensors. Not human trade ships, not civilian vessels, but warships, and not just a handful. Hundreds. Their engines silent, their hulls black as the void, emerging from the shadows of Saturn's rings like predators lying in wait. Admiral Calloway's voice returned, this time, deadly. "You should have listened." And then, for the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Council's fleet came under fire. The First Galactic War begins. The Galactic Council had believed themselves untouchable. For millennia, their authority had gone unchallenged, their fleets unmatched, their power unquestioned. They had brought countless civilizations into the fold, taming warlike species, guiding others toward unity, and ensuring that conflict remained a relic of the past. They thought humanity would be the same. They thought wrong. Because on this day, for the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Council's fleet came under fire. The ambush at Saturn's rings. The first shot came without warning. From the swirling shadows of Saturn's rings, Earth's fleet emerged like a predator striking from the dark. Hundreds of warships, sleek, black, and built for a war that the galaxy had never imagined, opened fire in a coordinated barrage. Railguns, energy weapons, and missile volleys tore through the void, slamming into the unsuspecting blockade fleet before they could even react. The Galactic Council's ships, though advanced, were built for diplomatic enforcement, not outright war. They relied on intimidation, not combat superiority. Their shields held for mere seconds before collapsing under the relentless firepower of Earth's newest and most dangerous creation, the United Terran Fleet. "Return fire," bellowed Grand Admiral Theron, his voice a mixture of shock and rage. But it was already too late. The Ghost Fleet awakens. The Ghost Fleet had been a myth, a whisper among intelligence circles, dismissed by the Galactic Council as paranoid speculation. A theory that humanity had not been idly waiting under their imposed containment, but instead preparing. Now, the myth was a reality. These ships were not crude prototypes nor outdated vessels. They were advanced, modular warships, designed for versatility and combat efficiency. "Engage at will," came the cold, calculated voice of Admiral James Calloway, the commanding officer of the United Terran Fleet. And the battle truly began. The fall of the blockade fleet. The Galactic Blockade had consisted of 50 warships, each a masterpiece of interstellar engineering, their hulls gleaming with centuries of accumulated technological perfection. The humans had brought over 300 ships, not as refined, not as aesthetically beautiful, but built with one singular purpose: destruction. And it showed. In the first 5 minutes, 20 council ships were obliterated. The human warships didn't fight like any force the galaxy had ever seen. They moved unpredictably. They adapted instantly. They fought without fear. And most terrifyingly, they coordinated without central command. While council fleets relied on hierarchical structure, the human fleet operated in decentralized combat groups, adapting and executing rapid tactical shifts in real time. The science of warfare. Council fleets were works of art, built with elegance and efficiency. Human fleets were weapons, built through brutality and necessity. And the difference showed. The United Terran Fleet's tactics were chaotic yet precise, a fusion of centuries of Earth's brutal history. Wolf pack formations, borrowed from naval submarine warfare. Three-dimensional dogfighting, adapted from Air Force tactics. Mass driver strikes, combining railgun artillery with old-world ballistic bombardment. Every war humanity had ever fought had shaped their strategies, and for the first time, they were using them against an interstellar enemy. The Council fleet never stood a chance. Within 10 minutes, half the fleet had been destroyed or disabled. Within 20 minutes, the survivors were attempting to retreat. And within 30 minutes, the battle was over. A message that shook the galaxy. Grand Admiral Theron's flagship, the Celestial Dawn, drifted in the debris field, its engines failing, its weapons disabled. His crew stood in stunned silence, their glowing monitors displaying a reality they could not comprehend. They had lost. Not just lost. They had been annihilated. And then the transmission came. A single, unwavering voice. Admiral Calloway. To the surviving members of the Galactic Council fleet, this is Admiral Calloway of the United Terran Fleet. Your ships have been disabled. Your forces have been defeated. You are now at our mercy. Return to your leaders. Tell them. The blockade is broken. The containment is over. Humanity will not be chained. If you wish for peace, then speak to us as equals. But if you attempt to suppress us again, if you believe for 1 second that we will bow to your demands, then understand this. The next time we fight, we won't stop at your fleet. We will come for your worlds. And you will understand why you should have never ignored our warning. The transmission ended. The remnants of the Council's fleet limped back to their homeworlds, carrying a message more terrifying than any before it. The galaxy's response. The fallout was immediate. The news spread across the stars like wildfire. Humanity, a species the Council had once dismissed as primitive and insignificant, had just defeated one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. And now, the other species were watching. Some in fear, some in awe, and some with interest. Because if humanity could break the Council's chains, then perhaps they were not the only species that could rise up. The Council's emergency summit. Within hours, an emergency session was held. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos, voices shouting over one another, panic and anger filling the air. They must be stopped before they gain allies. They've already gained allies. Do you think they built those ships alone? We underestimated them. We need a diplomatic approach. Diplomacy. You just watched them destroy our fleet. They gave us a chance to negotiate. We should take it. And if they refuse, then we finish what we started and wipe them out before it's too late. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Council was divided. And in that division, humanity sought its greatest opportunity. The war had only just begun. Back on Earth, Admiral Calloway stood in the command center of Lunar Base Alpha, watching as data came in from across the Sol system. The first battle had been won. But the war was far from over. He turned to Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief strategist behind the United Terran Fleet's rapid technological advancements. What do you think they'll do next? Calloway asked. Sarah smiled. They're scared, which means they'll either double down or try diplomacy. Calloway chuckled. And if they double down? Sarah's smile faded, her eyes sharp with calculating precision. Then we stop being nice.